Hi everyone, and welcome back to Learnosity's webinar series. Thanks for joining us for our second long-term support webinar of 2019. Just to introduce myself briefly, if you don't know me, my name is Michael Sharman, and I'm the Director of Product at Learnosity here in Sydney. I'm responsible for the strategic planning across the entire product portfolio, leading the product development and delivery teams, including the product managers, the design team, and 6 development teams. Firstly, some housekeeping. Just a quick note that you are on mute, and if you do have a question, you can ask it in the control panel. It should be on the right side of your screen. A member of the team will be responding to any questions that you might have via email after the webinar. You can also log a ticket through our support portal at help.learnosity.com with any follow-up questions you might have. And anyone who's registered for this webinar will be sent the recording this week. Firstly, we're going to go through an overview of today's webinar. We're going to be looking at all of the features released last week in our latest long-term support release, which is, of course, 2019.2.LTS. This is going to cover assessment, authoring, and analytics. So, for assessment, let's briefly run through some of the features. We have a new drawing question type, a line reader accommodations tool, more support for ARIA labels when you're authoring Cloze question types, some accessibility enhancements including a UI update to the rating question type, and simplified version support for the math keypad for students. The authoring release saw us introduce a new ability to create as well as edit items from within the Author API's activity editor. We have an action builder, which is now available in the Author API. Some of you might know that from the Author site. We have some tag whitelisting options around access control to tags. You can customize presets in the Author API activity editor. You can have better customization of labels in the Author API activity editor. That's for our player. And we introduce source, note, and description in the Author API and an item scoring interface to set scoring at the item level. For analytics, we saw some aggregate reporting enhancements. You can use your own adaptive engine, and you also now have access to the raw data on the Learning Outcomes report. Okay, so first up, let's take a look at our assessment releases in some more detail. The drawing question type is a brand new question type that we developed to accommodate a compass and a line tool. And these tools enable students to measure distance, draw curves, and draw lines on top of an image, which helps you evaluate things like geometric constructions, which addresses Common Core state standards. As well as the compass and the line, students still have the ability to draw freehand on the response area, which consists of an image that was already uploaded by an author. And this question, or this part of the question, does behave similar to the highlight question type, for those that know that one. That, of course, is still available. The drawing type has the freehand drawing as well as the line and compass modes for more flexibility during math authoring. Let's have a look at a quick demo here. Here the student's being asked to construct a perpendicular bisector of the given line B and C. I have tools up here that are configurable during authoring. We have the compass tool where I can increase the range, put the center point on B, widen it a little bit, and what I want to do is just be able to draw an arc here. You can also set different colors if you want. Just going to move that around, move to C, complete my arc. I move to the line tool, and I can finish the bisector. Okay, the line reader tool is an assistive tool. It's an accommodations tool, and that is useful to help students focus their eyes while they're reading. Makes it easy to focus and to digest content that might be in long pieces of text. And to use the line reader, students basically drag and drop the tool around the page using the transparent piece in the middle to fully focus on the line of text in question. The line reader is quite flexible. It can be added as a standalone feature or a simple feature, just like you can with the audio or video tools. And you can also make it available as a button in the player. And to look at a demo of the line reader in action, we will quickly just go to a new demo here. This is what I was talking about, the flexibility. In this case, we've got a line reader that might be put above a passage of text. Students can enable this, and they can just drag it down at their own time. You can increase the size if you want. You can also increase the size of the transparent area. Quite flexible to students. As I mentioned, you can also launch the line reader from a button in our player, from a public method as well. You can also have it auto start as an item navigates to a new, as a student, navigates to a new item in question. ARIA labels in Cloze question types. Before, we didn't have the option to use ARIA labels in our Cloze question types, and we have now introduced that option. Now, this means that screen readers are able to provide students with more context between the stimulus and the input fields that the author has used in terms of the fill-in-the-blanks questions. The example in the screenshot here is this response area where the student has put the word sisters. The ARIA label in there has been defined by the author as female siblings, and that's what the screen reader will read out when used by a user with assistive tools. We've updated the rating question type to allow keyboard navigation as well as ARIA labels, just like we did in our Cloze question types. And you'll notice that we also made some UI refinements. Most notably, the styling of the question has been updated, as well as the ability to hide the info panel that you can see in the screenshot here. Finally, for assessment, we have given you the option to use a Simplified Math keypad in all math question types. And this keypad accommodates the number pad only and allows a maximum of 2 rows and 5 columns. The keypad is customizable, and any of the symbols supported in our regular keypad are also supported here. Authors might find this useful if you only want students to use a couple of symbols in a question, or if you have perhaps younger students who might benefit from less content in the keypad, a slightly simplified UI. You might even just prefer a simpler UI or UX for students as they are attempting math problems. So we have a look at a demo here. You can see the standard keypad is loading up here, and this is the kitchen sink. Everything's enabled, just with the basic simple group at the moment. The algebra keypad, the chemistry keypad, and now the simplified keypad. This example obviously only 1 through 5. As we mentioned, you can have 2 rows with 5 columns. Next up, let's take a look at some authoring. You can now create and edit items inside the Author API activity editor, which means you aren't restricted to following the traditional linear path of creating items before creating an activity. This is particularly useful for authors that want to edit or make fixes to items while inside the activity editor, or for someone like a teacher or an instructor that wants to create quick and simple assessments. As I said, you don't have to create the items first and then create an activity. You can do it all within the context and wrapper of an activity. Having a look at a demo of what that might look like for an author. This is our activity builder. For those familiar, you only had the find items before, which was of course still available, but now you can create items in line. I might find one item, add that, and now I can create another item as I go. So I can mix. In this instance, I'll just do something like a true-false. Just leave the default question for the sake of the demo. Once you've added it and we go back, you can see that both items are there. One that was added by existing items and one that was created on the fly within the activity editor. We've added the action builder to the Author API, which already exists on the author site. The action builder is configured on an item and allows you to set up events that trigger actions. So, for example, an action could be that the item loads, maybe via navigating, And then action could be that audio on the item auto plays. So in this case, when the item loads on the page, the audio will auto play. And you can use the action builder to autoplay audio or video. You can auto record audio and video if you're using those question types. You can enable or disable the student from being able to respond to a question. And you can enable, disable, or force navigation on an item in an assessment. So, for example, you could configure the action builder so that the student's assessment will automatically navigate to the next item in an assessment when certain actions take place or after a certain amount of time. So the action builder has many applications, mainly in early learning, in high stakes, compliance training, and also in language testing. Let's look at a demo. So here I have a test the student's going to start. As it starts, you notice there's a video there, and the video automatically plays. Now, right now I have a multiple choice question using the block UI. I'm clicking here, but I can't click anything because the video is playing. This is the event is item load, the action is disable the question. Now that that video has stopped playing, I can now interact with the questions. Tag whitelisting. Tag whitelisting lets you control which tags the author can view and use, which makes it easier for developers to maintain tags. Another bonus to tag whitelisting is that it's much easier to segregate content if your item bank is used by different customers. Customize presets in the Author API Activity Builder. So in the Author API, in the Activity Editor, we've made it possible to customize the default templates, which are the standard, the long content, and long content with a sticky footer. And this is easily done by checking and unchecking the relevant checkboxes in the editor's UI to enable or disable specific buttons. For example, the accessibility menu or the calculator. Let's have a quick look at a demo. In here, I can add items as I might normally do, but when I go to the player, I have different options here. By default, you'll get our three main presets: standard, long content, and long content with a sticky footer. You'll notice as you hover over there, you get options. If I tap that, I can turn things on or turn things off. I can turn off the save button. I can turn off the review screen. I can turn accessibility off, those bits and pieces. We've also enabled better customization by authors in the Author API Activity Editor. By allowing authors to customize the text of any buttons in the assessment player and any messaging, any pop-ups, titles, tooltips, all those sorts of things to suit whatever phrasing you need, whatever language you need. You might be delivering an assessment in French or in Arabic, whatever you need. You can now set these labels up within the Author API. Let's have a quick look at a demo here. Here is an example where I've just got one item in the activity editor, and when I go to the player tab, I can customize labels here. We've categorized these into buttons and messaging and tooltips and those sorts of things. I might go to the review button down the bottom and call it review items just for the sake of the argument. I can apply that once I preview. I can now see review items. When you're editing an item as an author in the Author API, you now have access to a source field, which is useful for keeping track of any literature used to track the item content. A notes field. This is handy just to leave notes to one another in a multi-author environment, or for reviewers to leave comments, those sorts of things. And also a description field, which is meant to give more context around the item for other authors or reviewers to view. Of course, you can use any of the fields for whatever content you want. Just to know, they are strictly author-facing only, and they're only intended for administrative purposes. These fields are not visible to the student. Finally, for authoring, we have an item scoring UI option. So previously, if you were a user of the Author API, the only way you could set an items, not a question, an items scoring type was to do so programmatically. In this release, we introduced a simple drop-down menu on the item edit page for authors to configure the item scoring without developer help. As you can see in the screenshot, the default is per question. We also have dichotomous, which means all questions in the item need to be correct to be able to get a point value. Otherwise you get 0. And we have what we call a dependent scoring type, which mirrors the functionality of the Common Core EBSR scoring model. And finally, let's go over our analytics releases. For aggregate reporting, we've made some under-the-hood enhancements so that the reports are both easier to implement and easier to manage. You only need to create your dataset once and then refresh this dataset when you want to update it rather than creating the dataset again. And if we look at a demo here, for those of you who haven't seen our large group report, this is a report at different aggregate levels. In this example, we're seeing it at a school level. There are 3 schools here that a district administrator might be interested in, or a region administrator. I can go into the Bronx Public School, and within there I can see there are 5 classes, and I see a box and whisker chart of each of the schools' performance. I can go into a fictional class here and see the performance of each student. You can now use your own custom adaptive algorithm via your own adaptive engine. And this would be used to calculate which items are presented to students during an adaptive assessment rather than using Learnosity's default algorithm. By default, Learnosity uses the one parameter model RASH adaptive algorithm. If you want to use something else, whether it's a 2PL, 3PL, anything else, you can host your own adaptive engine, and we've done the seamless integration. So all the items are played through Learnosity, but we're reaching out to your adaptive engine for the next items to load. For the learning outcomes data, you are now able to draw the raw data from the learning outcomes report, just like you can with any of our other report types that are loading in the browser. This means that you can power your own visualizations, you can build dashboards, and provide teacher exports. That concludes a high-level look at our latest long-term support release for 2019, 2019.2.LTS. Each release does take about 4 months of planning, testing, developing, documenting, creating demos. It's everybody involved across the company, from development, of course, design, the products teams, the marketing teams, and they've really done a fantastic job yet again. Of course, we're already working on our next long-term support release, 2019.3.LTS, and we're slating this to be available around late October or early November. Thank you once again for attending today, and if you have any questions, please log a ticket at help.learnosity.com, or if you've already asked a question, we will be following up shortly via email. Thanks again.